Hello! Okay, so in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to set up your monthly budget in your Save, Live, Thrive digital budget planner. So the technology I'm using, I have a first generation iPad Pro, first generation Apple Pencil. I'm using GoodNotes 5 as my note-taking PDF annotating app. And the budget that I am currently using, the budget planner, is the free mini digital budget planner that you can use if you either want to see if digital planning is a good fit for you, if you want to see if our digital planners are compatible with your device, and so forth. But the same budgeting worksheet you can also find in the 2022 dated digital budget planner, and you can also find the same worksheet in the annual budget planner as well. The two difference between the fully functional digital budget planners is that, of course, one is dated, the 2022 one, and the annual one you can use year after year because it is undated. So let's go back to the free mini digital budget planner, which you can see is not as fully functional as either of these. It doesn't have as many worksheets per month or the different financial worksheets and resources up here, but I love this resource for testing out to see if digital planning is a good fit for you or not. So the first thing I want to bring your attention to when you are creating your budget is first starting with your income. So in the income section, you want to brainstorm all of the different income sources that you have coming in throughout the month and write that all down, from your 9-to-5 job, from any side hustles, if there's any gift money or anything that you anticipate coming in, and we're going to write that total amount down at the bottom. So with this budgeting strategy, this is a zero-based budget, which means that we are assigning a job to every single one of the dollars that's coming in with your income this month. So at the end of the day, the income minus expenses, that net total should equal $0 because every single dollar has been given a job. So we're going to come back to this number and continue referencing it. But once we know what your total income is, now I want to bring your attention to three different major spending categories. So those are your needs, so your necessities, food, housing, utility, transportation, medical expenses, things like that, the things that you need to stay safe and secure as a person. Then the second major category are your financial goals, so the money that you want to send towards things like debt repayment or future vacations, retirement savings, investment contributions, your emergency fund, all of that falls into your financial goals category. And then the third category are your wants. So that's your recreational spending, miscellaneous, personal spending, restaurants, things like that. The fun money that you want to have aside in your budget. So once you've taken care of your needs and your goals, the money that's left over is free to spend in whatever way you want towards the recreation. Now, one thing that I talk about more in those supplemental training videos for the full budget planners, so the 2022 or the annual digital budget planners, is how to find balance between those three major spending categories. So that's something, it's a resource that's heading your way January 1st if you choose to buy one of those fully functional planners. So now that we have this $4,000 written out as the income, we're gonna focus in first on setting aside the funds necessary for those necessities. So I'm gonna start writing out some different types of expenses, and I'm gonna start with bills. And for this purpose, I'm gonna assume that the health insurance payment has already been taken out of this person's paycheck. So this is the money that they are sending home. They're taking home with them. And this would be like doctor visit co-pays, maybe prescription payments and things like this for this particular medical expense. So for rent, let's say $1,125. So now I'm going to take out my calculator. I'm just going to calculate those numbers up real quick. So we have $1,555 as the total. So now that we've gotten the bills and utilities taken care of, now let's talk about transportation. I'm going to include the auto payment as a debt payment because that is a type of debt if someone has an auto loan, but I'm going to kind of think about it now. So let's say auto loan, let's say $350. We'll come back to that number, but auto insurance, let's say $130. Gas, $125, and then let's say maintenance, setting aside maybe $50 per month towards maintenance fees. So $305 total. And now I'm going to head over to these grocery expenses. So let's say that this is a single person's budget. They aren't paying for groceries and things for a family. I'm going to say maybe $300 per month for groceries. And let's say they like to go to 2 different grocery stores. You can be as specific with this section as you want. So now that the necessities have been taken care of, now I'm going to zoom in on these debts and savings objectives. So with the debt payments, we have the auto loan. Let's say that there are student loans, maybe $380, and then a credit card. So $880 for the debt payments. And now for the savings and investments, in the 2022, like the full budget planners, I have some financial goals worksheets that can be used to really help brainstorm different goals and reverse engineer the money needed in order to achieve those goals. So taking that information from those different types of goals, you could input that into the savings and investments to just kind of organize your thoughts. So I'm going to start out and I'm going to put in an emergency fund and let's say a travel fund and investments. So let's say $450 here. Okay, so now I'm going to total this all up between these different categories. So between the categories we have laid out so far, that is $3,185 spent. So if we subtract that, so $4,000 minus $3,185, we still have $815 left to send between these other categories here, which is really exciting. So I want to start with the miscellaneous actually, because one thing that I personally believe with budgets is that they should be flexible. So as you're going through the month and let's say some of these numbers start to change, that doesn't mean that the budget has failed, right? That means you just want to go back and recalculate things to make sure that you are still having everything fit into your overall spending plan. And one way to create that flexibility in your budget is adding some miscellaneous expenses. So I'm going to put $100 of miscellaneous, and I'm just going to say, I don't know what this is for necessarily, but this could cover any type of spending that doesn't necessarily fall into these categories to create an extra cushion into the budget in general. And then also remember, if some of these categories shift throughout the month, it is okay to go back and recalculate and update that spending plan. So now we have $715 remaining. So let's say for restaurants, maybe let's make $300 towards restaurants, and you could break this up. Maybe you want some of this to go towards morning coffee. So that brings you your $300 throughout the month, but there's flexibility here, right? Like let's say you don't end up going out with friends as often as you planned, or you don't end up going on as many date nights or whatever. There's flexibility to move things around in this category. So now let's head to personal expenses, and we have $415 remaining currently. So let's say between the personal expenses, let's say we want to make this like $215, and recreation could be $200. And maybe some of this is clothing. Let's make this like $100. I'll say makeup. Let's say $50 there. So let's see, there's still $65 left to spend. I'm just going to put a question mark for now. That brings us up to that $215. And then recreation, maybe I could say friends. And family. I don't know. if there's any events that come up throughout the month. And you might even find, as you are working through this wants category here, let's say that you didn't want to spend a total of $815 between the wants category in this hypothetical example. Then what you could go back and do is you could take a look at your financial goals. Maybe you want to send some extra money towards the debt payments or your different savings goals and things like that. There's flexibility to play around with these numbers to make it fit the budget that fits with your values, goals, and financial situation. And again, don't feel like just because this budget is written down at the beginning of the month that this is exactly how the spending plan needs to stay, right? Budgets should be flexible to fit with the changes that happen in our lives throughout the month. So let's say that during the month, something comes up and the budget wants to change a little bit, but I don't want to get rid of this record entirely. What I would do personally is duplicate this page. And now let's say that I want to make this like a version 2 or version 2 updated. And then you can make any changes to your spending as necessary to see how this new version can fit or how it compares against the initial version that you created for yourself. But if we total everything up between all of these categories, we should come up with $4,000 to put in to our final calculation. So let's say we know that this is $4,000 for income, expenses. Okay, so now we want to double check in the budget to see if these expenses equal or exceed or are less than this total income. And I calculated this up, and right now we are at $4,305, which we do not want to stick to because right now the expenses are exceeding the income. So what we're going to do is we need to take away $300 from some of these different categories. So one thing I want to start with for sure is I'm going to start with this recreation, and I'm going to turn this into 100. So that is $100 that we've taken care of. Let's say I want to take away some of the funds in date night. So let's say I want to make this, or restaurants, I want to make this $200. I'm going to update this. Oops, I took away too much. $200 total. And I want to lower this a little bit. So let's say that I turn date night, into $50. I could turn going out with friends into $50. So that brings $200 total, and then I still have $100 left to decide between. So I think I'm going to take it away from some of the personal funds. So I'm going to definitely start, I think, with this unknown 65, and then maybe I decide to just make them make up $15. So that's kind of how that process would look. So now if I go back and I calculate this all again, all right, so I am still $5 over, so I'm just going to update this one more time. I'm going to make this $10, and now our expenses equal $4,000, which brings the net total to 0. So that is the typical process of creating this budget. And again, I know I've said this a couple of times in this video already, don't feel like this needs to be set in stone for the entire month. You can go back to the drawing board and let's say there's not as many medical expenses in the given month and you want to allocate those funds to a different area. Or let's say that your gas and electric isn't as expensive as you thought it would be. Or same with, let's see, like when your emergency fund is totally built up or you don't spend as much at the grocery store. There's lots of flexibility here. So going back and continuing to revisit this page and update it as necessary to, again, be flexible and fit in what's actually happening in your finances in the month. So That is how you will create a budget with your digital budget planner. Stay tuned because in a separate video, I'm going to walk through how to track spending and keep track of where all of that money is kind of going throughout the month.